So how close does the new Roland Boutique JX-08 get to the vintage Roland JX-8P? Well, it depends on what revision you're talking about. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Zach Marr from Alamo Music here in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications. This is our Alamo Sound Lab channel where we talk about all things music tech related. And today we're comparing the Roland JX-08 with the Roland vintage JX-8P, which it is based on, and according to many people already, loosely based on. So let's talk about it. How similar are the two? And I'm going to come right out and say it. They are, the way to understand the JX-08, in my opinion, is that is heavily inspired by the JX-8P. It is not, they didn't use ACB technology, so they weren't going for a high accuracy emulation. But what's interesting to me is that when I played this, I immediately felt the color and it reminded me of experiencing the JX-P for the first time. And I think that is a really interesting, I think that was a design intention, if I'm just gonna theorize on my own. But the JX-08 gives me JX-8P vibes, but when I compared the two, the overlap is smaller than I thought. And I think that is actually really interesting because I think the JX-08 sounds terrific. And I thought that from when I first heard the YouTube videos posted from Roland directly and a couple of the demos that came out pre-release. I was really impressed with the way it sounded, and I didn't understand because the Jupiter X and Zencore engine apparently has the same engine in it. But I think, as I've read the marketing materials from Roland, the JX-08 has a few new effects, and I think what they did, I think there's a lo-fi compressor and I think the chorus are new. And they did a great job of, with those two things, I think they got the character of the JX-8P, which is a very lush and warm analog sounding instrument. It's great at pads, great at kind of analog piano sounds, and it's got an incredibly noisy chorus. But what's interesting is not all the JXPs have an incredibly noisy chorus. This version, which I think is one of the earliest versions, there's a couple revisions. There's, I think, 4 revisions, and nobody is documenting this incredibly well, but you can look online for the different revisions for the JX-8P and see pictures of them. And we're actually going to do a follow-up video where we compare 2 revisions. We happen to have 2, and they do sound different. But this original one has an incredibly noisy chorus. If you turn up the volume and put your headphones on, you can hear the chorus. It just sounds like noise. There's like a soft noise, and I think it gives it a lot of its character. The chorus on the JX-08 does the same thing. You can hear the chorus pulsating in your ears when nothing's being played. And I think the chorus is based on this earlier revision because it seems to get muted out in the later revisions. At least in the other JX that we have, which is a later revision. There's a lo-fi nature to this sound, and I think it's used a lot in the patches. You can turn it on and off, apparently. But I think those two things really captured the character and the sound of the original instrument. There's a lot of differences in the details when you listen to it, but I love the sound of this, and I think it really is a beautiful instrument in and of itself. It adds features. You get arpeggiator, you get a sequencer, a tune-lane sequencer. You also get 20-note polyphony, where this just had 6. And then you get the PG800 controller built in, which really unlocks the magic of the JX-8P in the first place. There's some fun things you can do with the LFOs on the DCOs and the envelope. You can create some really crazy sound effect. It's one of my favorite things to do on the original JX-8P. You can do that on the JX-08. And you get it's a fun synth to program. It's more complicated than a Juno 60, and I think this is, honestly, if not their best, one of the best boutiques that they put out. So let's take a listen. I'm gonna play through 6 or 7 of the original patches and do a side-by-side so you can hear how they overlap, and I hope you get a sense of how Their character is similar, even if the details are a little different. And we'll conclude with some final thoughts. So there you have the two. Again, the overlap is not as much as I expected, given the character being so similar. And I think that's a really interesting idea. I think when manufacturers are releasing these inspired or cloned instruments, is it more important for it to sound accurate? Or, because it can almost be clinically accurate at times, like the JU-06A is very close to a Juno 60. It sounds so close, but at times it's almost clinical. And where it differs, it's sometimes not necessarily always a musical representation of it. Although it is an incredible instrument, I think it's a lot of fun. The JX-08, I think, errs on the side of being a musical instrument. It's got 20 notes of polyphony. It's incredibly rich to play with, and it just has the character of the JX-8P, even though when you compare them, it's different. So I think that's an interesting conundrum. Would you take a more musical, inspired recreation of something, or would you want more of a clinical, accurate version of it? Again, maybe that's a binary that doesn't exist, but I think that's when I'm thinking about this, that's kind of how the lens I find to be most useful. So would love to hear others' thoughts on this. Have you had experience with both? Which one do you like the way they both sound? What are your thoughts? I would love to hear them. Leave them below. If I left anything out, also leave a comment below. And until next time.